You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
Well, friends, what do you say we catch up over some science fiction, and some powerful libations and give thanks for it all? It's Monday night. It's 10 p.m. Eastern. It's 7 p.m. Pacific. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, so it must be time for Mission Log Live. I'm John Champion.
And I'm Norman Lau. Tonight, we welcome back to the show a very special guest who happens to be the science consultant for all the new Star Trek series on the air. We'll be teching the Trek with her a little later. And we're also going to meet someone who has been hard at work lifting the restrictions on Romulan ale.
That's right.
Give us a call right now to join our conversations tonight. You know what to do. Click on the Zoom meeting link or use the one tap from your smartphone or call us at 669-900-6833 and enter the meeting code, and our esteemed Earl of the Green Room will let you in. Or is it Earl's Green Room, or is it Earl Green's room?
I think it's the Earl Green Room. That's what I'm going with. In fact, we should probably get him a little sign for that. And I
carve that out of mahogany for him. Yeah.
And the thing that I like is that wherever Earl goes, it's always the Earl Green Room, no matter where. Yeah. Right. So, all right. I'm very happy to see that there are so many people who have joined us in the live chat tonight. People are already excited to meet or maybe re-meet or just hang out with Dr. Erin again. So we will get to her momentarily. And everybody stick around because you know the drill. Normally at the bottom of the hour, we do a little ad break. Tonight's break is going to be a little bit different. I'm just going to say, I've got something here I want you all to see. So we're going to get into that in a little bit.
It gives me chills still.
I know. And Norman, I'm so happy about tonight's show because there are so many times on Mission Log that you and I will say, well, this is great discussion and everything, but we actually need somebody who knows something about science to chime in. And we've been saving it all up. We get to do that tonight. And of course, all of you get to do that tonight by leaving your comments in the chat and by calling us, by clicking on the Zoom link. And speaking of all of you, let's say hi to the people who are there right now chatting with us. There's Jim, there's Paul. I imagine the other Paul is right behind that Paul, not physically, but virtually. There's Narda, there's Jane, there's John Arminio. Good to see you as always, my friend. There's Kim, there's Ryan. Let's see here. I really do enjoy hearing this warp core. Ryan, does that mean you've got like the 24-hour hum of the Enterprise D going? Yeah. Let me tell you, that sounds so good on my HomePods in stereo. That's, that's good stuff. All right. There's Matthew all the way from Japan saying hello to Dr. Erin. And he says, opening up the office as usual at the moment. So I'm listening from just a few hours in the future. Let us know how the future is, Matthew. I appreciate that. There is other Paul, just as I suspected. There's Alan. There's BC. Damn it. BC every time in YouTube shouting Alamarain just because he knows it will get to me. All right, so BC, glad to see you there. Kind of, maybe. There's David. There's John Cooley, of course. Wonderful. Cooley! Glad to see you, Cooley. There's Eddie. I mean, so many people saying it. Scott Paul, my friend, you said, are you buying, John? Well, all right, for you, my friend, sure, but you know that means somebody else has to buy my drink. It's complicated. We'll do it in Vegas again this year. So wonderful to see you all. Jane shouting hooch, and then Dr. Mohammed Noor. So hanging out. That's awesome. Very happy to see yet another person of qualification. Norm, you know what that means? That means tonight on the show and in the audience, a grand total of 2 people who are qualified to talk about all topics scientific and Star Trekian.
John, I have to slide this in here. So are you telling me that we have reached our possible threshold of people that can talk about things?
Stop. I'll quit the show. I'll quit the show right now. That's what'll happen.
You know, I had to get that in there.
You did, yeah.
I don't feel good about it, but I had to do it.
Hi to Sam and BC in YouTube. He says, tell Erin Alamarain for me. No, I won't. I will not say Alamarain to her for you. All right. Good to see everybody there. Norman, let's do a quick catch up on what's happening on Mission Log this week. You handle the back end stuff. I'll just say right off the top, there will be no Mission Log this week because as you all know, we drop our shows on Thursdays. This Thursday is Thanksgiving, unless you're not in the U.S. Look, if you're in Canada and you had Canadian Thanksgiving, hope it was was great. I still want to know what's on a Canadian Thanksgiving table, by the way. But there will be no mission log this week, but that's okay. Those of you who get the show early, you will get that next Wednesday. And then for the rest of you who get the show on its regular Thursday, you will get that the next Thursday, December 1st. So hang tight. In the meantime, send us your comments, your questions, missionlog@roddenberry.com, and then maybe we'll work that into another show or a discussion on Discord. Remember, you can follow us at youtube.com/Roddenberry Entertainment. Norman, what would they find there?
Well, I mean, aside from some great programming, you would also find like our newest release for Star Trek Prodigy, which is going to be released tomorrow.
Yes.
Covering episode 14, Crossroads. Big episode. You don't want to miss it. Ashley V. Robinson and I had a fantastic time covering it. And a couple of hot takes and a lot of pop culture references, which is what we are wont to do. So you can find it there. You can also find Mission Log Engage, which is our feedback show. John and I read comments when they come in, emails, and some of them are wonderful. They challenge us. They're a little bit hot topics, hot takes, and hopefully we'll get some in there soon. So you can also find that on the Roddenberry Entertainment channel on YouTube.
Yeah, so Mission Log Orville, Mission Log Engage, all those great things. And remember, if you need to find the clearinghouse for all of this stuff, just go to podcast.roddenberry.com, and that is where you will find all of our shows and how to connect with us there. Heather already saying, I want Romulan. Oh, no, I'm sorry, Narda saying, I want Romulan ale now. We'll get to it. We'll get to our promise. And Heather, nice to see you in the chat. So look, without further ado, I say we welcome our guest who is so kind and generous with her time and such an awesome part of the Star Trek community as a professional and as a fan. And I love geeking out with her. Welcome to the show, Dr. Erin MacDonald. How are you doing tonight? Applause, everyone. Applause.
Yay. Yeah. Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
We're thrilled to have you appropriately from the bar on the Cerritos.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's what I try to do. Yeah, it fits the mood. What can I say?
Very nice. Can I ask you something right off the top? So there is so much Star Trek happening. You've got you, of course, are the consultant on Picard and Strange New Worlds and Lower Decks and Prodigy and Discovery, of course. Are the needs of those shows just completely out of whack? Like one takes up all your time. See, what I picture is like Lower Decks. They just don't even care. Like, we're going to turn somebody into a bug and you're fine. Okay. And they just go do it. But are some of these shows a little more, do they take their science a little more seriously, or they're all about the same?
Yeah, that's a great question. Absolutely. I think people know, there's a rolling release of these shows, right? And so in the same way that we're getting them on a, now pretty regular basis, which I gotta say is pretty awesome. That also fills up my time in that same rolling progress, that some shows, they'll be filming while the next ones are writing, while the next ones are in post-production. But absolutely, if you were to line them all up, I always like to say on the spectrum of like science to fiction, any show is going to land differently than any other sci-fi show. There's just, you ask the showrunner kind of, where do you want your show to live? And they're going to give you a totally different answer. So you're absolutely right. Like Lower Decks is off the wall. Sure, let's do it. And my role is to just make sure we don't say anything wrong. And then as a Star Trek fan, I'm going to give a voice to someone who wasn't in the room, but also loves the nerdy stuff that they're doing. Yeah. And, but then you have a show like Discovery, which is like, okay, these are scientists who are sciencing. So let's try to make this like as accurate as possible. Let's show the life of scientists. And then for a show like Prodigy, which is airing right now, it's less about, it's absolutely about making sure that the science is right, but there's also an element of like educating kids because of the target audience for Prodigy. So we're looking at like, from a STEM education perspective, what can I contribute to try to help meet that need? So it's a very unique for every single show. Absolutely.
That's a really interesting idea with Prodigy, because I hold that show, and I know Norman does, in such high regard, because of its ability to talk to kids and share these really great, just fundamental Star Trek ideas. And at the same time, you can ask an adult audience to suspend disbelief about something. Say, look, they have warp drive, they have transporters. Okay, now let's go tell stories. But within that, if we're doing something that is scientific, there has to be a point where an adult could say, like, well, yeah, maybe, maybe not, but I'll give it to them if we can. When you've got kids, though, do you feel like it's a different sort of responsibility that, okay, now I actually have to give them the real science here, because if I don't want them to grow up with the wrong idea.
Right. Yeah. Right. But we're also introducing a whole world of Star Trek science that is fictional. Yeah.
Right.
So if you remember when they first discover the transporter, and I think it's like even a cold open where they're just playing around with how the transporter will work. You have to put yourselves in the mind of like kids who have never seen a transporter before. And sure, it's all fictional. Kids are smart. They know it's a show. They can suspend disbelief. When you tread that line, these showrunners, Kevin and Dan Hageman, are like very good at introducing it in a way where it's like, this is story and this is science. And with the story aspect of transporters, you still see them being like, how far can we get it? Can we do it outside the ship? What do we need to do it? You need to have the comm badge. Like all of those little things just set the rules for kids who have never been exposed to this stuff before.
That's when they were transporting pies around the protostar.
Yep.
Which was awesome.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, I want to jump into our live chat. And by the way, I know that we got Paul and Alan lined up as callers. So thanks, guys. We will get to you shortly, I promise. Dave, by the way, take care of yourself. I'm sorry to hear that you are under the water, but he says, here's a question. Of all the Star Trek shows you've consulted on, what subject matter that we've already seen did you find the most challenging and or interesting to consult about?
I mean, yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. I saw Professor Muhammad Noor in the chat as well, and him and I both worked on the science of the burn and for season 3 of Star Trek Discovery. And I would say that was probably one of the most challenging for me. Not only was it very early on in my role as a science advisor for Star Trek, but I did a lot of science for dilithium. So that was a matter of like looking back. It was marrying these worlds of like particle physics, which is sort of my background, but not really, but also looking at the long-standing canon of dilithium and making sure the science that we were baking into that story didn't contradict anything that had already come, anything that they'd already said about dilithium. So that was probably one of the biggest challenges for me, was like that weight of being like, oh, we're adding to the canon of like dilithium.
Yeah.
That's like, take this seriously.
Right.
I guess that raises like another question. Like when you're starting to add on to kind of like the canon of the science, how much does that influence how far you're going to go versus the history that has come behind it? Because it's either going to be like an incremental increase, or it's going to be, we're going to just go forward and just add the future to the already established future.
Yeah, and that's a great question. I think a lot of it was actually the latter, just because even though dilithium has been around for a long time, there are some rules with it, but there wasn't much established for what exactly it was. So like, for example, we had never said explicitly whether dilithium was its own thing called dilithium versus a weird dye molecule of lithium, which like in modern times, our modern understanding of chemistry can't exist. Like that's not a thing, but is that something that could exist in the future? So we had to take what we knew from what Star Trek had already said and just say like, we're going to take this to a whole other realm. But like most of my role is just making sure we don't say anything wrong, whether that's scientific or whether that's honoring past canon, making sure that we're not counteracting anything that's already been said about it.
Got it. By the way, some great comments here. Mohammed Noor is saying that your dilithium ideas were epic, really ingenious. So folks can go back and watch this absorb. Just watch it for the dilithium, And then, some other really great comments here. Ryan,
can you get to to David Majors? Because that's one of my favorite comments too.
Oh, wait, David. Oh, go ahead and bring it up. Oh, I see. David Majors says, I wanted to say that I love seeing Rock Talk doing math equations and the equations showing up on screen, of course. And of course, Sam, our listener, went the extra mile and put that together in a chart with what the equations are and what they mean. And I'm still blown away by that. So bravo all around. Was that a you thing, or was that the producers saying, like, here, just fill in with the math? Or
no, that was a me thing. I always hesitate to take credit because obviously it all comes down to the showrunners and the amazing people who come to this. But absolutely, they were like, we need equations. And establishing, I'm very grateful. A lot of the Star Trek shows that I've worked on, I've come in late into the day. Only Prodigy and Strange New Worlds was I involved on season 1, so for Prodigy, just being that integrated that early on is really rare for a science advisor. Most people kind of test the waters, see how the relationship works, see how you take the information and you give the notes back and try to make sure there's a good working relationship. Prodigy was like, yes, Erin, please come help us. Just everything. We're going to develop Rock Talk. We're going to make a little scientist. We're going to have all these kids do science. And we're going to have all this post-production and how things look. And so for that scene especially, I remember when we were first talking about it, it's a great episode, that what she's really doing is orbital dynamics, which is a really hard science. It doesn't sound that hard. That's freaking hard. So noting that that's orbital dynamics and then adding in all of the things and just saying like, Erin, we could use a lot of equations for this. So I'm writing out every single orbital dynamics equation. And I love that the fans go through and check everything, but also, no pressure, man. Because I don't know, like, if I accidentally drew or wrote something wrong, that could be torn apart. So it's a community that, it's a small team of very talented people, and we are fallible. So I ask for that respect, but I'm very grateful that the fans get into it and love that effort's being put in. Right? Like I like doing that work, but I also love the fact knowing the fans are going to pay attention to that they're not just like, oh yeah, equations, sure, that's probably right.
Excellent.
They actually check it because I took the time to make it right,
Good. Well, hey, now is a great time if you want to call into the show and say hi to Dr. Erin and pose your most difficult science questions, of course, or just geek out. You can do that too. But we do have some people lined up who want to say hi. And first up, it's Paul. Paul, not the other Paul. This is Paul. How's it going, Paul?
It's going excellent. I'm spending the week of Thanksgiving with 3 of my favorite people online. John and Norman, of course, from the show here, but Erin, my wife and I met Erin a few years ago in Colorado. She was not associated with the show yet. She was this lecturer, and we both looked at each other after half an hour of, magic Erin on the stage and just said, wow, she's going somewhere, and holy cow, has she. In fact, you go to your local Comic-Con and you run into an artist named J.K. Woodard, who comes out with this book. And guess what? When you get really close, if we look at the bottom line here, special guest appearance by Erin MacDonald.
Nice.
So I'm going to give Erin a chance now to talk about that one, but I see you have a book out. Is this true?
I do. Thank you, Paul. Hi. No, it's so great. I just want to take a moment to really credit. I think a lot of people in the chat and a lot of people that I met along the way, I got my start at conventions. That was honestly how I got started doing this. A lot of people ask me, how do you get a job as a science advisor for Star Trek? And for me, it started by missing teaching when I left academia and taking the time to go to conventions and teach the science behind science fiction. And that's where I got to meet all of these awesome people that then led me to Star Trek, that then led me to be an advisor for Star Trek. And since you plugged it so nicely, yes, I do have a new book out called Star Trek, My First Book of Space.
Yes, applause for that.
It's a board book that is for all ages, especially down to 0 to 2, which, let me tell you, writing an astronomy book for ages 0 to 2 is a fun adventure.
That's so cool.
But thank you. I really appreciate that.
But did that prepare you at all for like writing for Prodigy, writing for those specific age groups?
Yeah, and actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think a lot of, when I left academia, one of the first jobs that I got was teaching at a science museum. So I was what's called like an educator performer, and I had done a lot of work on the stage. I used to be a dancer, and then I got into some acting work. And so it was a perfect job for me, but it was such a good experience as a science communicator to work in that sort of environment, because all day, every day, you're talking to like 5-year-olds who've just learned about black holes and retired aerospace engineers who want to know about the latest Mars mission. And all of those skills of learning how to say, I don't know, learning how to look things up, learning how to distill explanations to reach different levels. All of that really prepared me, not just to write a book like this, but really to do science advising, because I work with writers who come from scientific backgrounds, but I also work with writers who have zero science background. And so trying to match those levels and trying to make it relatable and how to figure out how to fold things into a story that can quickly be distilled into like one line of dialogue, all of those skill sets build on each other.
Excellent. And by the way, people in the chat who are saying that they want to buy this book, David wants to get one for his 2-year-old nephew. Heather is saying that she bought a bunch for a new baby niece. And people are asking, where do they get it? So go ahead and plug away.
Anywhere books are found, I recommend bookshop.org, because that connects to your local independent bookseller. So you can find this book and just search for Star Trek, My First Book of Space. There's also a companion book called Star Trek, My First Book of Colors, written by my friend Rob Perlman, who has written a lot of great, fun Star Trek books. Perfect Christmas gifts or holiday gifts. So highly recommended. Thank you for asking.
Nice. Well, Michelle just said she literally just ordered it. So
good. That's good. I just wrote it. I just wrote it down. We have several friends. I have a specific friend who has about a 4-year-old, so it's going to be perfect for them. But you got to consider that as you age, sometimes the 2 to 4 reading level is better. So I'll order one.
If I may briefly, I will also plug that I have a lot of friends whose kids are sort of between 5 and 7, and they also enjoy this book, despite being a little bit older than a board book. The words are pretty advanced, and a lot of kids, that's right when they're at their peak love of space, and they're getting to learn things like what a nebula is and an exoplanet. So I'm finding that a lot of kids that age like actually reading the words. So, but thank you. Sorry for the shameless plug.
See, well, no, look, and that's great, because like a 4 or 5-year-old, you skip to the back of the book where Dr. Erin describes the existential horror of being trapped at the point where time stops outside a black hole, and how you exist and don't exist at the same time. That's that sweet spot for getting kids really interested in science.
I've seen Erin there at Dragon Con when she did 4 talks in one day, and I was walking with her between buildings, and she's amazing. And I swear that was close to a black hole I've ever been, and I was just watching. So, but I do have one burning question. Since we last saw you in Denver, I believe. Okay, Star Trek bingo. On the A Strange New Worlds, the bingo game they played. Did you have anything to do with that? And if you didn't, what would have you added? Because we are always looking for things, challenging things to do at our next party in Las Vegas. So perhaps you could enlighten us as to what we may want to consider.
I'm not getting shot with a phaser, Paul. I draw the line at that.
Oh yeah, Norm, it's coming. It's coming, Norm.
Right.
I love that. That's a good question. I didn't have anything to do with it. I loved reading it. It was delightful. what would be on my bingo card for being on a starship? I think messing with the artificial gravity would be, if you can quickly adjust the gravity such that it messes everyone up but quickly adjusts.
Nice.
That would be on my bingo card.
I love that. That's so cool. Yeah.
We'll do our best to emulate that with everybody laying on the ground after they've had some of this new
There you go.
nail coming up. And one last thing, are you following the new mission to the moon at all? I imagine you probably take a little video of that.
Yeah, the Artemis mission. It's awesome. I'm watching like everyone else. I can't wait to see how it goes. So if you haven't checked it out, I highly recommend. It's the furthest we've sent a spacecraft of this kind, and it's very exciting to lay the groundwork for future crewed missions beyond the moon. So, yeah.
Exciting stuff. I'll pass it along to the break and whatever else is coming. Aaron, it's always great to see you. John and Norman, happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving.
Take care, friend.
All right.
Take it easy. Hey, before we go to the break, and this is just perfect for our crass commercial section of the show, because we're not really going to talk about our Patreon. We're not really going to talk about Discord, but everybody out there knows about it. Patreon.com/missionlog. That's how you get into our Discord. Somebody in the chat, Jim, just said there needs to be a real Star Trek bingo for fans at conventions. Well, Jim, let me tell you right now, among the many, many projects that we try to get off the ground week after week here, producing the shows that we do, there was a thread about Mission Log Bingo, and it still exists in our Discord. We've got enough time now because, well, there's no Seattle, but we've got enough time now leading up to Vegas for sure. There was talk of t-shirts, lanyards, the whole thing with Mission Log Bingo. You too can participate. We can get this together for next year, I am certain. And if you join our Patreon and then you go over to Discord, you can contribute your own suggestions to Mission Log Bingo. So that got that part of it out of the way. Right there. They got that part of the crass commercialism out of the way. Thank you all for indulging me in that. But now we get to welcome a guest and we get to talk about a product. Norman, how happy are you and I that we have Star Trek Spirits and Star Trek Wines as part of the Mission Log family now?
Well, I mean, this is really exciting. You know, we met Craig and we met the staff of Star Trek Wines and Star Trek Spirits in Las Vegas, had him on stage with us in the Roddenberry stage. And there's a product that we're going to talk about. John, you have those products in your hands. I am jealous that I don't. And I'm actually I'm trying to they're in my hands in spirits.
Spirits, yes.
And you know what? I can't do any more justice to the description than what you have, right in front of you right now. So I think
here's what we're going to do. We're going to welcome Craig to the show. It's Craig Spurrier from Star Trek Spirits and Star Trek Wines. Craig, looks like you're muted. I want to make sure that you are not.
But he has a great background.
He does have a great background. Craig, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Hey Craig, good to see you again.
Yeah. So we're so thrilled to have you all as part of the sponsorship for Mission Log. And you were very kind to send, I just need to show this off here. Okay. I'm holding in my hand Romulan vodka, and it is gorgeous in this reproduction bottle of what you saw in Star Trek 2. Okay, Craig, you've got it too. Yeah.
That looks like the rye.
Oh,
this is the rye, yes.
You got the rye. Okay. Mm-hmm. So here's what we're going to do. I also have the rye. And I popped the top on this. I want to say that it gave a very satisfying noise when I popped the top off of this earlier. Now it's been loosened up. But I'm taking that off. Good. I know, right? It's like glass top. Okay. And I have a Starfleet glass. There you go. NCC 1701.
Ooh, this is a live tasting by Mr. John Champion. Are you going to give us the Kirk face? You know,
right. I give you the. Yeah. All right. So, Craig, as I'm giving this a sniff, tell us what is in this bottle.
So the rye, it's an ultra premium rye. It's been aged 2 years in an oak barrel. So we've been working on this project for about 2 years now. Starting with the bottle, which was the most difficult part of the production process. But the spirit that you're drinking is an ultra premium rye from Kentucky. it took us 2 years to barrel. We have a mixol or a distiller that we've been working with closely to get the right flavor and balance, as well as the potency, because it is a 50% alcohol, so it's 100 proof.
Nice.
It is strong. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah.
Well, you only use it for medicinal purposes.
Only for
though, right?
medicinal purposes. Yeah. Okay. Carry on. Yes.
It does awaken the senses, and it is very smooth for 100% rye.
It is. So, not going to lie. Yeah, this is really nice. I thought that this was going to be a lot sweeter, and I'm glad that it's not, because I don't really like sweet alcohols. It is strong, but it really has a smooth finish. And I can see drinking this on its own or with a very clever cocktail. I think this would lend itself to either way. By the way, so Norm, I know that you got to try the vodka in Vegas.
In Vegas, yeah.
Yeah. Erin, did you get to try these?
I have not, and I'm sad.
Well, you know where I am. So
I coerced my partner just to pour me some whiskey. I was feeling left out, so I have some.
Okay, that's what we do on this show. Yeah. So good. But wait, well, hang on. I don't want to get too far off track, but what are you having? What whiskey?
This is an Auchentoshan 3-wood. So,
nice.
Yes, I know. I could pontificate on its properties, but that's not what we're here for. So I'm just going to enjoy it.
Nice.
You know what I love, John? So watching you drink that, it almost looks like you're actually drinking a prop. That's, I think, the great thing about this whole thing. This, like, the illusion of drinking something from the Star Trek world. It's there in your hand.
And let me thank you, Craig, and everybody else. And you can tell us about the bottles and how these came together here in a moment. But that's what I love. This sitting on a shelf doesn't say Star Trek on it, doesn't say Romulan rye on it. Now, on the back, you get a little bit of the history, and that's fine. But this on its own just looks like something from the show. And what I love, somebody online earlier was asking me about these drinks, and the vodka looks very much like the Romulan ale that Kirk has. It is that color, right? And they're like, but what's in the rye? Is that just a painted bottle? Like, no. Go back to the Enterprise incident and look at what Spock is drinking. It is that color. So you not only have a match for the bottle, but you guys match the colors of the liquor as well.
Right. I mean, the original characteristics of Romulan ale were sky blue and going to dark midnight blue. So we chose the sky blue as the vodka and the dark midnight blue as the rye to distinguish the two. But very characteristic of what you see on set in Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan. And then we worked with Jeffrey Lombardi, the prop master for Picard, to get the bottle shape right. And his comments yesterday were, you guys, I love your attention to detail. This is the best Romulan ale bottle I've seen. So we're very passionate at making sure that we create products that are in universe and are pretty much show prop replicas that come to life.
Nice. And yeah, these bottles were not easy to make, from what I understand.
No, very difficult to make because of the stepped pattern, and pulling that out of the mold was very difficult. We exceeded I guess what they call it, the 3% yield that you get when you manufacture something, and half of, or 3% just doesn't make the cut.
Oh, wow.
But so it took, a lot of trial and error on the mold. We had bottles that were tilted a little bit. The bore was very difficult and the bore is how the topper seat fits and seats into the bottle. So it was just a very time-taking process.
Yeah.
But we got it right.
You knocked it out of the park, and in person, when you see the gold stamp on there, it's just absolutely beautiful. And look, the whole reason, it's not just because we think you're a fine human being and we love talking about cool Star Trek props, but you guys are cool enough and nice enough to sponsor our show now. And you have gone above and beyond by offering something very special. So I do know that StarTrekSpirits.com just went live today. I checked it in the morning, it wasn't there. Checked in the afternoon, boom, it's there. All right, so you can go there, you can order. I saw you, Dr. Erin. I saw the double, you're being cool with this, right? You can go to StarTrekSpirits.com, and we have a special code, very easy to remember, Roddenberry. That's who we are. That's where we are. Use the code Roddenberry, 10% off at Star Trek Spirits and at Star Trek Wines. I believe there is a special token that they can get by ordering at Star Trek Wines, and we'll talk about that next time as well.
Right. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we just launched a few hours ago. We've gotten over a couple hundred orders in so far. So
180 of those are our audience. So.
But, thank you, audience, for that, because we love sponsorships. Right?
Yeah, use the Roddenberry as your coupon code and get 10% off.
Fantastic.
And love to support you guys.
Thank you. It sounds like such a line to say it makes a great gift, but I mean, seriously, this is the kind of thing that I will order for myself and as a gift, because it is that cool and it's really good. I'm just going to sit here and have a little more during the rest of the show.
I was going to say, you're about to get a few more orders.
Right.
I mean, it looks great on camera. The color looks great. You know, you look great drinking it. The jealousy is not a filter at all.
Yeah.
So, every sip is like a taste of the knife in the back.
Exactly.
You know, that's okay.
I can't relate at all.
No, not at all. Craig, thank you so much. We're off next week, but then the week after, we'll have either you or Howard on to talk about Star Trek wines. Cannot wait for that, because there's a bottle of Kanar in my office that needs to be opened. So
Perfect.
Thank you. And any other parting thoughts here before we say goodbye?
Well, we will be sending out a booklet of cocktail recipes with every order. Ooh. So we have 5 unique cocktails for the rye and 5 for the vodka. So,
oh my God, wonderful.
That'll be accompanying the orders as you purchase.
Look at that. So many bonuses. You get our code, you get the book. It's a whole... Thank you. Thank you guys for being so awesome and for being so thoughtful and detailed about a product like this. This is sort of the kind of Star Trek collectible I've wanted for most of my adult life. So thank you.
Good. Well, thank you.
All right. Take care, Craig. Till next time.
All right. Thanks, Craig. Great to have you on the show.
Be good.
Hopefully that George Dickel bottle is right behind it.
Yeah. right. Yeah, somebody in the chat, wait, where was it? Somebody said, are we getting Aldebaran whiskey? It's green.
Yes.
So, yeah. I'm sure you have a lot of things that are in the works. We'll check back. All right. Craig, take care. Right. Where were we? Science? That's what it was. Yeah.
Although I am a little envious of the Elkintoshin, because that I do like myself. You know. Yeah.
Thank you kindly. Mm-hmm. It's my favorite.
Yeah. There's one thing I know about Erin. She knows her way around a good alcohol or two. So yes, very much appreciate that. Bond.
It's a reputation I'm happy to uphold.
Well, the last name like MacDonald. You just. Yeah. Living up to what has been set before you.
A PhD from Glasgow, I'm pretty sure, aged my liver about 20 years ago.
I have said this on the show before on the podcast. I said if I ever had a chance to talk to Dr. Erin, I said I would offer her anytime I see her at a convention, a drink or dinner or both. Mm-hmm. So there it is.
I'll happily take
invitation.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, you got not Seattle, but we'll next.
No, yeah.
So, too soon. I know, too soon. All right.
Soon.
Yes, yeah. So I tell you what, we will get back to the topic at hand, or at least you guys can while I finish this, and we will welcome our next caller to the show, who is Alan, who has been so patient during the extended commercial break. Alan, welcome to the show.
My God, guys, no worries. That was fascinating. I was like, well, I'll just sit and watch this. This is fine. This is the show now.
Hey, and you'll be here soon. You'll be here soon. You might get to taste this. So yeah,
John. The last time I had anything called Romulan Ale, it was an energy drink, and the packaging was not nearly as fancy. So I'll take it.
Was it a Menergy drink?
It was something like that, yeah.
Romulan ale and gun.
By the way, BC in the YouTube chat says, bring Erin to Trader Vic's up here, John. Yes, 1,000 times. Yes, that needs to be a whole group outing. I've been, not that everybody needs to know this, but everybody will now. I've been sitting on this ticket to go up to San Francisco because one of the last, I think it's the last Trader Vic's in the United States is in the Bay Area. And I need to go there, something fierce. So, yeah.
Deal.
Yeah, make it happen.
I'm down.
Mission log Trader Vic's. Let's do it.
Log Trader Vic's, exactly. All right, Alan.
Love it.
Mission fix. Make it happen. Guys, it's great to see you as always. Erin, nice to meet you. It's a pleasure. Thank you for all the hard work that you do, making sure that the fake science is just as fun as the real science. I love the conversation earlier about dilithium. To be perfectly frank, it kind of brought me back to the headspace of like what a Mark Okrand does in inventing a language. You're inventing science and you have to keep it consistent, and that's something to be commended, I guess. It's really cool.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, it's one of those things that seems like a really fun idea, and then you realize the pressure involved. But I am grateful because even though it is sort of like quote fake science, there is still a lot of backbone to it, right? It's rooted in a lot of real science, and that's what's fun for me. Yeah,
that's cool. Yeah, and I know that you touched a little bit on lower decks previously, and I just as the sort of like goofy softball question, more fun, Star Trek physics or cartoon physics?
I love Lower Decks so much, and we're both clearly sitting on the Cerritos, although you're hanging out with the cool people. I'm in the empty bar, so I don't know. It's just, I don't know, working on Lower Decks is so special. I was so grateful to, like I said earlier, most of what I do on Lower Decks is very just kind of like, don't say anything wrong. We're just going to check everything. But the season finale of season 2, where they go into the star system and the primary ship gets disabled and they have to like go chase after it and like figure out everything. I was able to do so much work on that, and that was such a delight just to play with. There's no rules, It's like, all right, let's make something fun, and we really got to stretch the imagination of like. I think the brief was something along the lines of like, how can we make the ship look like naked C-3PO?
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Because I mean, that's something that has never really been touched on before. The fact that the ship has basically got a skin, and what do you do when you have to take off this? What's underneath all of that stuff?
Yeah, and I really got to dive into that. I was like, okay, there's outer hull plating. Like, what does that do? These blade of armor that we've had, like all of these things that we've kind of heard about. What can we play with, and what are the limits with a starship that have been established? And then what can we do to build on top of that? Right? Like, what more can we add that hasn't been mentioned before, but can still make the story work? And in case people weren't aware, I'm just going to self-plug shortly, but that was also the deepest honor of my life for Star Trek Lower Decks, to have Shax in the midst of everyone yelling at Lieutenant Kayshawn for coming up with a dumb idea to warp through the debris field, for Shax to shout, Dr. Erin said we can't do that!
That needs to be a t-shirt, by the way. That phrase needs to be a t-shirt.
Yeah, you can hear it, especially with headphones. A lot of people miss it because it's in the midst of a lot of things, but it is there.
Always watch the subtitles. Always. Yeah.
In Fred Tatasciore voice, no less. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
And you spin that into mission log bingo, so that's something you check off on your bingo card.
Yeah, right.
Someone wear that shirt.
That's exactly. Yeah,
that's a corner square. That's valuable real estate.
Alan, any other thoughts or questions tonight?
just excited to meet you. It's been a pleasure getting to share silly ideas about cartoons with you. And I see that our good friend Sam is up next, so I'm sure he's got a lot of good stuff coming because.
Oh, it's about to get heavy.
Yeah,
watch
awesome.
out.
Discord plug After Dark gets deep when Sam shows up. So
yes, yes.
Well, thank you, Alan. It's been a
Absolutely.
pleasure chatting on the Cerritos with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have a great night. Have a great holiday for you. Have a great Thanksgiving where applicable. I'll just leave it at that. So,
There we go.
have a
Alan,
good one,
thank
everybody.
you
Bye-bye.
so much. Take care.
Oh, and a pun for Alan. Jane says, Norm Chekhov on your bingo card. Ooh.
Oh, very good, very good. Yeah, I
Applause.
appreciate
Well done,
that.
Jane.
Applause. Yeah.
Yeah.
And before I go to Sam, good questions in the chat as well. So Jane again says, question for Erin: how closely do you work with the writers and creating dialogue? And I'm curious. I feel like maybe that's sometimes extremely one way, extremely the other. You got a blank space to fill in, or maybe they have already created something. You just need to tweak it, or usually.
Yeah, no. That's a great question, Jane. Thank you. I think, like I kind of alluded to before, but a lot of it is a trust relationship. So working as a science advisor, there's a lot of writers who have had very bad experiences with science advisors who come in and they just say, nope, that's dumb. Can't do that. Don't do it. And what's so important is for me to be able to yes and the process. And so initially, I'll usually start off by just getting scripts and just giving notes on those. But as the relationship grows, especially over seasons, I'll be invited more into the writer's room to work more closely with writers to the extent that they will just fill in, like, Dr. Erin will fill this in later. I think even I've heard stories of, like, back in the 90s that I think Frakes told me that they have the pillar filler.
Right.
Like Michael Pillar would
Yes.
just, like, make stuff up for them. Like,
Yeah.
that's kind of the equivalent of just saying, like, well, Dr. Erin will fill it in. And, it's a couple of the writers who know me really well will just put in the quantumness of the quantum.
Oh dear.
That's the code word for me to just be like,
Uh-huh.
Erin, fix this.
Yeah.
Now we're talking.
That's how you get lizard babies. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
that's the flag for me to be like, no. So it is. It's really all about the relationships. It's really fun.
Very cool. So we do have some great other questions here in the chat. David, I love your kind of three-parter here. I do want to come back to that. Other David, I want to come back to you as well. But we do have Sam waiting on the line. So let's hear from Sam. And honestly, I want you two to meet so badly anyway, because Sam, you did such an amazing job pulling together that chart based on Rocktock's equation.
That's
so,
Sam.
Sam, how's it going?
Yeah, it's going all right.
Hey, Sam.
Hello. I had to call in and say hi.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi,
you did.
Sam. I am, first of all, flattered and also relieved that it is a fully, I don't think people can fully appreciate the term love-hate relationship until we've had to go through this level of scrutiny. And I deeply appreciate the effort that you put into for that. And if you want to share what this context is for people who don't know.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things where, I mean, even when you see a lot of equations in shows, you can pick out like commonalities or like, oh, I recognize that from here or that from here. But this was like one after the other. I know that one, I know that one, I know that one. And they're all related to each other. And that's very unusual. So that's what, like, once I saw like maybe 5 of them, I was like, okay, now I'm going to go through one by one and see if they actually all are real things, or if I just noticed the ones that were real, and they were all there. And so, yeah, because I studied physics, I took orbital mechanics, so those stand out to me. No, as opposed to other sciences, there's a lot of science equations, but those ones stand out to me, so I couldn't miss it.
Oh, that makes me so happy. Yeah, I really, it was fun to work on. And it's one of those things, like, I don't think a lot of people really can comprehend sort of the collaborative atmosphere, like, for better or worse. It's one of those things where it's like, hey, Erin, we'd love to have some equations for you for this scene. I'll put them together and send them out. I don't see the end product really until it airs, so I'm just hoping that I made it as clear as possible and that they interpreted it correctly. And it's all, again, collaborative, because they could look at the equations I sent. And this has happened on other shows too, where they're just like, that's too long, or that doesn't make sense, or it's too confusing or too distracting. And so I was just so happy with how that scene turned out. And yeah, I'm so glad that it got picked up from people to be like, oh, that's a thing. That's real. That wasn't just, because especially I think the bar is so low for kids shows, for like, the sort of meme of like equations floating in front of my face. And the fact that people like you saw that and they went, oh no, that's like legit orbital mechanics equations working through. That makes me so happy. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what surprised me too. Is like, again, I'm surprised by Prodigy because you think it's a show for kids. They could do whatever they wanted. So the fact that it's there is it's almost more pleasing. And because the other example that I found from that show is in the earlier part of the season. They're going through the time warp and the time of Mach, and Zero points out like, oh, here's a graph of what's going on. And by the way, it's a signed damped or a damped sine wave is what he says. And that is a very jargon term that that I was just, again, shocked to like, yeah, though I do those all the time. And here it is on a kid's show. That was amazing. Yeah.
I'm so glad you mentioned that episode because, Time of Muck, I think it's such a classic Star Trek episode. Like, if people have been sleeping on Prodigy, at the very least, watch that episode, and you're just going to be like, oh no, like this is Star Trek at its core. Disaster happens, weird things throughout the ship. Everyone's working together, but across different dimensions to try to solve the problem. And legitimately, I mean, I've been working in Hollywood for like 6 years at this point, and that is the first and only time to this date that I have seen a graph in a script.
Okay.
And honestly, I mean, I give the credit to the writers for that episode, but just being able to be like, oh yeah, that's called a damped sine wave. And they're like, okay, good to know.
Right. But people
and the way
also
they integrate it. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Doc, but people in Twitter also took the temporal illustration that showed all the different time passing, all those different rings, and they broke those down too in terms of Rock's larger outer ring moving slower than the inner ring that Jankum Pog was in. And they were doing like all the calculations. I'm not nearly qualified to even talk about it from an illustration standpoint, let alone what that actually meant. But there's math behind that, right? Did you have to do
There is. Yeah. Honestly, it's not to the level of being like, this is the amount of seconds per second. And like, I love the fact that people go to that depth. But it's more, because I also had people reach out to me to just point out, as gently as Twitter can be, that Rock is experiencing time slower and she's seeing plates move, gravity, and that wouldn't be the case because it's relative, right? That she's experiencing that time normally. She wouldn't see it being slowed down. But this is those times where you have to be like, but you have to convey it, and especially to the audience. And for kids to be able to watch that and be like, okay, her time is going slower just from seeing a plate fall slowly. That's all you need. You don't have to get into any more deep level to it that like a 6-year-old can watch it and just be like, oh, okay, time is slower for her,
Yeah.
So those are those times where it's like, we're not going to get into like relativity and the fact that technically your time is slower, but she's experiencing it at the same rate than normally. Yeah, it becomes sad real fast. And honestly, even I would just cry in the shower trying to figure it out. I'm not going to inflict that on an 8-year-old.
Yeah. And I tried. I tried to do the calculations. I specifically looked at the graph. I looked at the y-axis. There were no markings, so I just had to go by the ticks. And the only references I had was like Jenkinpog says like, this thing takes 10 minutes to explode. I'm like, all right, so the standard is 10 minutes, and how long was like the short ones on screen, and then what was their tick mark? I couldn't make it work to feel like, what did Rock Talk experience? Because that's the ultimate question. So it was either like the way I would either like move the numbers around was either like, just a few hours or like, hundreds of years. I couldn't make it like a nice number. So I still have no idea how much time she went
okay. Through. It gets dark real fast. but I love that you mentioned that, because I do think that's one of my roles as a science advisor, is to know when to not explain something, and putting numbers on that y-axis is over explaining things, and so it's just one of those things where it's like, sure, if you want to do the calculations, God's be with you, man. Like, just go forth. But to sit down and actually put numbers to that y-axis, that gets to the level of like, do we really need to go in this depth? And are we really going to be like, like digging ourselves a hole, in the sense that if we put y-axis on there, then people could look at it, they could crunch the numbers and be like, well, it was only like, okay, based on this, it was only 8 hours for Rock Talk, which then destroys the entire emotional impact of that. And so you really have to reach that point where you're just like, it is what it is. The story takes precedent. The emotional impact takes precedent. And just to take another step back, we can criticize it all we want. It is a brilliant story idea. And just to have a time-based disaster ship focused to be new and fresh in Star Trek after 800 episodes is awesome. And to have these kids solve it, I don't know. It's one of my favorite episodes. So I love the fact you dug into it. Yeah. And thank you.
Fabulous. Sam, thank you so much for calling. You did what you did on our Discord chats. You just come in all mild-mannered, all calm. You're like, here, I'm going to drop all these heavy ideas right here in front of you all. Yeah. Thank you for doing what you do. Appreciate it. And hope that we see you around again soon.
All right. Good. Yeah, good to see you. Good
Take
to
it
see
easy,
you,
friend.
Right.
Be good.
Yeah.
All right, so I teased that I wanted to save this last question here for the end of the show, and I think it's so provocative and thoughtful. And it could be sort of something very flippant, but it's not at all. David Takeshi in our chat says, so here's another question. After consulting for so many cool Star Trek shows, have you ever found yourself sitting down and wondering, where will we really be in the 23rd, 24th, 25th century? How will things really be based on science? What were your conclusions? He says, okay, sorry, that's 3 questions, but that's where we are. And I love the heart of what David is asking there, because I was watching this thing today about the Enterprise being restored to the Smithsonian. They were talking about famously how Matt Jeffries loved airplanes, and he's just extrapolating. What if you take airplane ideas, NASA ideas, projected a couple hundred years in the future? What are the elements that we can still sort of identify as being part of a flying machine, but something that feels futuristic, that's real, that you can base a story on and get involved with as a character in the show? And it just made me think, like, yeah, the stories are great and everything, but if we're talking about Star Trek as this projection of the future, that must be an interesting place to live for somebody like you, because you are trying to make real the things that are fantasy, but also incredibly hopeful and important to a lot of people watching.
Yeah, there's a lot of layers to that. I think that there's the philosophical question, which is really the moving one, the one that gets to our core. There's also just the practical aspect, which I think gets driven by story and budget needs. I mean, it is, right? Like where the transporter came from, right? Was literally driven by budget needs. And then when they tried to, so it's like, okay, we need them to very cheaply get from the ship to a planet. So we're going to shake a jar of glitter and it's going to look great. And then they're going to be on a planet. And then with the longevity of Trek, it's like, okay, well, we've established that rule. So how do they do it? And great scientific minds who came before said, well, science says no because of the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. You want to know where every particle is if you're going to move it around and put it back together. Right. So the transporter has a Heisenberg compensator. Sure. How does it work? It works very well, and they figured it out in the future. That's fine. And so that's more of like the practical aspect of building this tech for the future. Sometimes it's the needs of the literal budget effects, all of those. Now we are reaching a point where that's kind of unlimited, to be honest. Like the budget and the capabilities for CGI and even using these like virtual reality walls and all of that is just so advanced that we can kind of tell whatever stories we want. So where does the technology fall into that? And where do we see ourselves going? I think for me, it's really close to my heart because, you know, when I got into science and when I especially went into graduate school, I just wanted to be a member of Starfleet. I just literally in my core wanted to be a science officer working in an astrometrics lab in Starfleet. Like that is all I wanted to be and do. And so thinking about that core of humanity, like what drove me to watch Star Trek and feel that and then pursue that as a literal career, spend lifetime, energy, emotions pursuing that because of a television show, I think is just this innate desire to explore space. So when we think about like where our technology is going to take us, where our, you know, exploration of the universe is going to take us, it really comes down to that human desire to just go beyond. You know, Star Trek started out as a space western, but even those at their core were humans exploring an unknown frontier. And that's what Star Trek has offered us. And so for me, when you think about the technologies and you think about where we can take these stories, it's really about reflecting on where we want to be and what our capabilities are. And not to end on too philosophical of a note, because that's not who I am. So I don't drop those bombs and then I'm like, yeah, think on that, humans. You know, we did have to go through World War III to get there. So out of darkness breeds a lot of creativity and innovation. And I hope that that's not what's required. It might be, but I really do. I think what Star Trek offers us is the belief in humanity to just persevere and to keep exploring. And that's what's so exciting. So I love it.
Fabulous. All right. Well, thank you, Norman. Thank you. We'll do this again very soon. And
next time I'm going to be drinking the rye.
Yeah, exactly. So remember, we're off this coming Monday. We'll be back the next Monday with Aaron Waltke from Star Trek Prodigy. So we'll talk about how his episode made me cry. And with that, Mission Log Live is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. Technical production on Mission Log and Mission Log Live by the infallible Earl Green. Be sure to visit podcast.roddenberry.com for the latest from Roddenberry Podcast. If you'd like to support Mission Log directly, give us a look at patreon.com/missionlog. Thank you to everyone who joined us live or later. We look forward to chatting with you again in a couple of weeks.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.